Professor, you obviously are informed about the content of the bilateral phone calls between the two presidents, but it seems, Professor Sutter, there are different emphasis that the two put on in terms of the nature of things to work out. Chinese president talk about the general bilateral relations. U.S. President Donald Trump keep on emphasizing on the DPRK issue. What do you make of this difference?
Well, I think it's important for people in China to understand that the perspective here in the United States is quite different than the perspective in China about these issues. Mr. Trump was elected in an election where criticism of China figured very large in the American discourse. There's a lot of complaining among the elites in the United States. The Council on Foreign Relations, the Asia Society, have all issued reports talking about a need for a toughening of the American relationship with China. Mr. Obama was seen as too weak and reticent in the minds of many critics. So Mr. Trump is coming from that context, and I think it's very important to understand this. Otherwise, you'll be baffled by why this is happening, because there's a sense of needing to rectify certain imbalances in the relationship that have been allowed to continue for a long time.
Mr. Yang, though, earlier we do remember very well that President Trump talked about this, quote, great chemistry between him and his Chinese counterpart, President Xi Jinping. Have things going the other direction? Is it too early to say that?
Yes, it remains too early to say that. I should say by this way, through the first summit meeting in Florida, the two presidents was successful to stabilize the bilateral relation. With the background Professor Sutter mentioned, the background of the new phase of the bilateral relation was not good. And so many expectations of the bilateral relation was bad. But the two presidents make a turn around, say, have a stable relation. But now some unstable factors or negative factor emerged. That is inevitable because that is the long-time problems in the bilateral relation.
But let me ask you about that. I mean, President Xi, during the phone call, he was talking about earlier the meeting with President Trump achieved some, quote, important result.
Yep.
And now he talked about there are negative factors.
Yep.
How is China looking at the, quote, these negative factors? Does China believe that they are likely to intervene with the general trend that has been set earlier during the bilateral meeting between the two presidents in the United States?
Well, I think the negative factors referring to several latest hot issues.
All right, name them.
Yeah. Arms to Taiwan, that's an old issue. And American destroyer invading Chinese water territory. Another issue, also not a new issue. And but one new issue is U.S. sanction on Chinese bank, very small local bank. That is something new. But basically, the negative factors are mixed with the new and the old issues. That reflects the complex of the bilateral relation. And I think President Xi will have a very difficult and a tough summit, unlike Florida summit, with Donald Trump at the sideline of the G20.
Professor Sutter, what about that? We have to deal with them one by one, I guess. Hard to generalize. Let's just talk about the DPRK issue. U.S. always believed there has to be more pressure coming from China toward Pyongyang. China say it is a sovereign country. We can't make decisions on their behalf. Meanwhile, now the recent sanction, as mentioned by Mr. Yang here in Beijing, against a Dandong bank, a small local bank in Dandong, accused by the United States of dealing with DPRK financially. All of this mixed up. Are the expectations from both sides to begin with very different, and therefore do we really have some common ground in terms of working onto the future about this issue, DPRK?
I think the one thing I would ask you to consider is the change in the American approach to dealing with China in this government. The Obama government, like the Bush government, put a great deal of emphasis on the relationship with China. The overall relationship with China was very important for them. That isn't so important in this administration. What is important in this administration is achievements that are important for American interests, America first. And they don't put such an emphasis on the importance of the overall relationship. This is a big change. And people in China don't understand this, and Xi Jinping and his foreign minister act like it's continuing, the same high regard for the overall relationship, which caused Mr. Obama to be very reticent in his reactions to various affronts to China, from China. And Mr. Obama never linked. He never linked one issue with another issue. Mr. Trump links all the time. He's constantly linking. This is a big change. And so the issues that we're facing now that have emerged after the Florida summit emerged because the Chinese did not meet expectations on North Korea. So now they're doing things in the United States on Taiwan, on South China Sea, on sanctions against North Korea, and there will be many others, because these expectations were not met.
Okay, Mr. Yang, I need to have you to jump in here. First of all, expectations are set by the others, and it's hard to know what exactly the expectations are and why would the other party follow suit. That's one thing. I'd like to know about the Chinese view. Secondly, does China feel comfortable about linking all the issues together? And will China allow the United States or go with the United States about the fact that they want to link all the things together? Mr. Yang.
Well, I'm afraid I'm not fully agree with the method of analysis about linking and delinking between Obama administration and Trump administration.
So what is your view?
Basically, Trump opened a new method to deal with China, say, do business style of deals with China on individual issues. Yes, to some degree, it's linking, say, if you do something, do a favor for me on this issue, I will do a favor for you on the other. So that is a sort of linkage, not linking all of the issues together to put either all of the good or all of the bad. So actually, it's a deal style.
But that is his style. So is China willing to go with it?
No, at least China, firstly, China doesn't go that way. China is strongly insist on principles. That's China's style. China always look up the importance of the principles on the individual issues.
All right.
For example, the Taiwan issue, we cannot make a deal for commercial style deal with U.S. on any other issues else.
On Taiwan, it's also an interesting case study between China and the United States when it comes to the relationship and the understanding of relations, selling of arms to Taiwan, despite of China's objections many times from the United States. For example, the biggest sales was in 2008 under Barack Obama to tune of $6.46 billion. That tapered down to $1.83 billion worth of weapons in the year 2015. And the Trump administration last week informed the U.S. Congress of a $1.4 billion deal as well. Of course, China objected to that. But what do you think, Professor Sutter, if Trump administration going to link the Taiwan issue, which is considered by China as the bottom line, to some of the other issues, does the Trump administration also understand the reactions and possible significance of this for the Chinese?
I think they do. I think we've already been through episodes of this in the past 6 months. Mr. Trump accepted a phone call from the Taiwan president and questioned the one China policy. Xi Jinping said he wouldn't talk to Mr. Trump if he didn't change his approach. Mr. Trump changed his approach. He had a summit with Mr. Xi Jinping. And yet we find that in the wake of the disappointment on the U.S. side with China's cooperation on North Korea, we find that the Taiwan issue and other issues has emerged again with the arms sales and the freedom of navigation issue and these sanctions against North Korea, and there's more in play. There are going to be economic issues, steel. You're going to see a toughening in the American position vis-a-vis China. The expectations weren't met, and so there's a lot of testing in this regard going on, including on Taiwan.
So, Mr. Yang, my question really, once again, related to earlier questions. Will China allow the bilateral relationship to go with the rhythm of the willingness of the Trump administration? Or China is likely to set the tune and set the pace of the bilateral relation? I think that is the ultimate question now seems to appear on the horizon. Mr. Yang.
Well, I don't think, first of all, I think that there's a big different way of thinking to deal with the bilateral relation between Washington, D.C. and Beijing. And secondly, both China and the U.S. want to dominate the pace and the focus of the whole bilateral relation. That make the bilateral relation development always in uncertain format. And thirdly, I think China always pay special attention to the different category of issues. The first category of importance, and secondly, and thirdly, but Trump administration at least always selectively make focuses on the individual issues. So such a different way of thinking, different way of doing, always add extra troubles or difficulties to deal with already difficult issues, individual issues.
You know what, gentlemen, we only have 1 minute left. We know the two presidents are likely to meet during the G20 Summit in Berlin very soon, in Germany very soon. So I want to have both of you expectations. Will the two, when they meet, be able to scrabble off some of the differences and still work on the common ground? What do you think, Professor Sutter? 20 seconds for you.
First, I agree with everything that Mr. Yang said in his last remarks, and secondly, I think it'll go fine. The Americans are going to do this with a smile on their face.
Really? Okay, what about a smile on the face of the Chinese? Mr. Yang, will that be the case?
Well, the result will be a smiling face based on the 2 points. Number one, comprehensive consensus to stabilize the bilateral relation no matter what the differences has emerged. And secondly, on the individual issue, the Korean Peninsula will have a new consensus that both of the countries will strengthen their cooperation and efforts on North Korean nuclear issue.